Hey you guys, what's up? In today's video, I'm going to be trying out all of the brand new Colourpop Love Struck palettes. I have all 5 of the palettes here, so I'm going to be doing 6 different eye looks with these palettes. So I'm going to be doing one look with each palette, and then I'm going to be doing a look where I combine all of the palettes together. So yeah, really quickly before we get started, I would really appreciate it if you would give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you're not already. Also, make sure you guys have your notifications turned on, that way you don't miss out on any of my future videos. All you have to do is click the bell next to the subscribe button, and then you'll receive a notification every time I upload a new video. And yeah, let's go ahead and get started. So as I said, today I'm going to be doing eye looks with the new Colourpop Love Struck collection, and I have actually tried these out a few times now. I wanted this to be like a true review video. I didn't want to do a video where I just try them out and give you guys like my first impressions. I've actually used these before, so I can give you guys like my real genuine thoughts on these palettes, not like a first impression. So before we start on all of the eye looks and I give you guys my thoughts on these palettes, I do want to do some close-ups, give you guys some information on the palettes, and then show you guys swatches of each of the palettes. So let's go ahead and start with that. All right, so here we have the Love Struck palette collection. I love the outer packaging of these. The price of these is $10 each. And then here we have the actual palettes. I love the packaging of these as well. I feel like they look very sleek. I love these thin 5-pan palettes. These remind me a lot of the Natasha Denona 5-pan palettes, but obviously these are a little bit smaller and these are way cheaper. So first up we have the Ballad palette. This palette has gunmetal, mattes, metallics, and pearls. This is kind of like a smoky gray toned palette. Let's go ahead and swatch all of the shades first, starting over on this side. So first up we have this shade called Novel. I'm gonna try my best to fit all of the palettes on one arm so you guys can see all of the shades, but there is the first shade. Next up is a shade called Epic, and this one is a matte. Next is the shade right here called Drama. Fate. And the last shade is called Prose, I believe is how you say it. Ooh, I like that shade. So here are all 5 of the shades. This is a really pretty smoky palette. Next up we have the Amor palette, and this one has metallic rose pearls, mattes, glitters, and metallics in it. And this one is full of beautiful rosy shades. So the first shade I'm going to swatch is this one right here called Passion. Romeo. Affair. Wow, that is so pretty. Woo. That went on so smooth. And the last shade is called Darling. Obviously, this shade is one that you have to build up. Let's add a little bit more. So there are all of the shades from that palette. Obviously, I don't think I'm going to be able to fit 3 more palettes on my arm, so we'll probably just be able to fit 1 more, and then I'll have to remove all of these. Next we have the Lyric palette, and this is a bronze palette that has metallics, mattes, and pearls in it. The first shade right here is called Melody. Next we have Ode. Unsung. Wow. Okay, that is amazing. Cello. And Verse. So these darker mattes definitely seem like shades that you have to build up on the eyes, which I'm totally fine with. So here are all of the shades from the first 3 palettes. They are beautiful, and I love the gray, the rosy, and then the more bronzy palettes. Next we have the Crush palette, and this one has copper shades in it. It has metallics, mattes, and pearls in it. I'm first going to swatch this shade right here called Bow. Then we have the next shade called LUV. I'm not sure if they wanted it pronounced love or LUV. Next we have the shade called Arrow. Struck. And Cherub. And the last palette is called Cherish. This is a cranberry palette with metallics, mattes, and glitters. First up we have the shade Destiny. I know I'm gonna love this shade already all over the lid. Adore. Faith. Wow, that one was very smooth. Precious. Yeah, the mattes don't seem to swatch very well. And the last shade is called Forever. Ooh, yeah, that one did not swatch very good either. I'm gonna try and add a little bit more. All right, so here are the shades from the last two palettes. So now that you guys have seen all of the palettes up close and swatched, let's go ahead and start on the eye looks. So the first thing I'm gonna do is prime my lids with the P. Louise base. I'm gonna do one eye at a time because as you guys can see, my lids crease pretty easily. So I'm just gonna go ahead and prep the left eye because I'm gonna be doing that one first. This is my favorite eyeshadow base. It's seriously so good. So I'm just gonna blend this out really quickly. So for the first eye look, I'm gonna be using the Cherish palette. And I'm gonna pick up the shade Adore first. And I'm just gonna take this on a fluffy blending brush. This is the Colourpop E23 brush. And I'm just gonna kind of stamp this into the crease, and then I'm gonna start blending it because my base is a little bit tacky, so I wanna do like stamping motions first to make sure the color sticks. So these mattes definitely have better pigmentation on the eyes than they do while being swatched. Since I did already do all of these eye looks before, I did wanna kind of test these palettes out before I did like a review on them, because normally I do just like a first impressions, and I've started realizing that I like don't like products after my first initial use. Like I like them at first, like they seem good, and then months down the road I end up not liking them. So this time I wanted to really test these out before I reviewed them for you guys. So I have already tried these out, but as you can see, this shade is really nice. It just blends out really pretty. It's a nice transition shade. We're gonna keep this eye pretty simple. Next, I'm gonna pick up the shade Forever, and I'm just gonna start out by stamping this on the outer corner, and then I'm gonna start to slowly blend this into the crease. I'm gonna keep this darker shade lower. I'm also going to run some of that shade along the lower lash line, keeping it pretty close to the lash line. I'm just using like a little smudging brush, and I'm gonna kind of just blend this along the lash line. Then I'm gonna pick up some of the first shade on like a small blending brush, and I'm just gonna use this to blend that out. I'm also gonna add a little bit of the shade Precious. This one is a little bit more of like a bright red, and I'm just gonna blend this all along the lash line. So now I'm just gonna take a little bit of concealer, and I'm not gonna do like a full-on cut crease because I just want to keep this eye simple. So I'm just going to lightly go over my lid with concealer. I'm not going to be too precise about this. Now I'm going to pick up the shade called Destiny, and I'm just going to apply this to the inner half of my lid. This is such a gorgeous champagne shade. I love shades like this, especially like all over the lid. This is like my favorite kind of shade. Now I'm going to apply the shade Faith to the rest of the lid. I'm just going to kind of stamp on that dark shade back onto the outer corner and kind of blend it into this lid shade. So here is this eye complete. It's very easy. I love the way that it turned out. The mattes and shimmers in that palette are really good. I went ahead and prepped this eye so we can move on to the next palette. So now we're going to be doing a look with the Crush palette, which is like the warm palette. So I'm going to be starting from darkest and going to lightest. First, I'm going to pick up the shade Cherub, and I'm just going to kind of stamp this into my crease, kind of mapping out the shape that I want. And as you guys can see, the pigmentation of the shade is really good. When I swatched these, the mattes didn't swatch the best, but they definitely go on the eyes like with brushes very nicely and very pigmented. Now I'm going to pick up this orange shade, and I'm just going to kind of tightly blend this right above the first shade. This is really just going to kind of blend out the edges of that brown. And now I'm going to pick up the shade Bow, and I'm just going to blend this right above the last shade. To save some time, I went ahead and cut this crease off camera. Now we're going to take the shade Arrow, and I'm just going to apply this all over the lid. And look at that. I feel like Colourpop has like the best shimmer formula. I love them. They're so metallic. Once again, I'm going to kind of add that dark outer corner shade back onto the lid and kind of blend it onto that shimmery shade. For the lower lash line, I'm first going to pick up the shade Struck, and I'm just going to kind of press this against the lash line and then start to slowly blend it out. I'm gonna blend this out with like a mix of these two shades. All right, so here are the first two looks complete. I love these two looks. These are probably like two of my favorite looks that I created with these palettes. I really like the bronze one a lot. I feel like this one is very versatile, especially because it has 3 mattes in this palette. There's only 1 shimmer, and then this shade right here is kind of like a matte with a little bit of glitter in it. When you blend it out, you could just make it a matte if you blended away the glitter, but you can build it up with the really pretty gold glitter in there as well. So yeah, these are the first 2 looks. Now I'm gonna go ahead and take these off so we can start the next 2. All right, time for round 2. I'm gonna be going in with these 2 palettes next. Both of these have like the glitter shades in them. So I'm first going to be going in with the Amor palette, which is like the pink and berry palette. So I'm first going to pick out the shade called Passion, and I'm going to take this on a fluffy brush, and I'm just going to press this into the crease first, and then I'm going to start blending it out. Honestly, I'm like so excited about this collection. I love that Colourpop did something different because they have so many releases. So I feel like a lot of the times things can get like repetitive, especially with a brand that has so many product releases. But this one I feel like was such a good one. I love how different these are from their other palettes. And of course the quality is just as amazing with these palettes as their other palettes. Like honestly, Colourpop has probably one of my favorite shadow formulas, both their mattes and their shimmer shades. Now I'm going to take the shade called Darling, and I'm just going to first start by pressing this on the outer corner, and then I'm going to blend it in the crease, keeping the shade lower. Now I'm going to take the shade called Romeo, and I'm just going to add this between those 2 shades because I feel like they need more of like a medium blending shade between the 2. This one does have a little bit of glitter in it, but once you start blending it out, it does blend out pretty matte. All right, so far so good. I'm going to kind of do like the same thing on my lower lash line that I've been doing. So first starting out with the darkest shade, and I'm just going to kind of connect to the outer corner and then blend across the lower lash line. Now I'm going to add that medium shade, which was called Romeo, and I'm just going to blend it from the front backwards. And then I'm going to lightly take the lightest shade and kind of blend these out. So I went ahead and added some concealer to the lid. I wasn't worried about being too precise for this eye look. Now I'm going to take the shade called Affair, which is that beautiful chunky glitter. So I just went ahead and picked it up on my brush, and then I did spray my brush with a little bit of setting spray, and now I'm just going to tap this on the inner part of the lid, and look how pretty that is. I love the Colourpop glitter shades. Normally I would use like a glitter glue or something, but since I'm going to be taking this right off after for the last 2 looks, I'm not really going to worry about that. So now I'm going to take the last shade in the palette called Woo, and I'm just going to start over here like closer to the outer corner and kind of blend this out. We are going to bring the glitter a little bit more onto the lid, but I did want to incorporate this kind of dark shimmery shade. It's not my favorite shade, but I do want to use it just because I want to use all the shades from each of the palettes. So once that's kind of down, I'm going to take a little bit of the glitter and kind of just lightly blend backwards. So there's like a little bit of glitter on the back part of the lid as well. And then I'm going to go back in with the berry shade and kind of blend this outer corner a little bit again. Honestly, it didn't blend away too much, which is good. So here is this eye complete. I seriously love this glitter shade. It is so good. Such a pretty shade. I love the different like dimensions to the glitter. So now we're going to go in with this palette right here. This is the Lyric palette, and I think for this eye I'm going to do a halo eye just so I have kind of different looks. I really like to do like cut creases and stuff, so I'm going to try out a halo eye with this palette. So I'm first going to take the shade right here called Ode, and I'm just going to put this all in my crease with a fluffy blending brush. There's not like a super light matte in this palette, so I'm gonna have to blend this one a lot so it kind of spreads out to a lighter shade. I'm gonna try and really get in here in this inner corner area, since I'm gonna keep the like darker shadows on the outer and inner corner for this halo eye. So I'm gonna kind of build it back up over here on the outer corner and on the inner corner. So now I'm gonna take this deep brown called Verse, and I'm just gonna kind of pack this on the outer corner and blend a little bit up into the crease. And then I'm also gonna add it over here on the inner corner. I'm also gonna add those two shades along the lower lash line. So I'm gonna press that dark brown up against the lower lash line, and then I'm gonna lightly blend the lighter shade beneath it. So now I'm gonna take the shade called Melody, and I'm gonna put this in the inner corner and kind of blend it like towards the lid and towards the lower lash line. And then I'm also just gonna put this right down the center of the lid. Now I'm gonna take the shade called Cello, and I'm just going to kind of like lightly blend this next to that center shade, right on the edges of each side. Now I'm gonna take the glitter shade called Unsung, and I'm just gonna kind of lightly pat this like down the center of the lid, just so we can add some glitter. All right, guys, so here are the second two looks. So now I'm gonna go ahead and take these off, and we're gonna move on to the final two looks. So we are down to the last two looks that I'm gonna be showing you guys. So first, I'm gonna be going in with the last palette. This is the Ballad palette. This is like the smoky gray eyeshadow palette. And then for the final look, I'm gonna be using shades from all 5 of the palettes, so you guys can see a look using multiple palettes. So I'm first gonna pick up this kind of like super dark gray. It's almost like a black with glitter in it. And I'm gonna do just my typical eye look that I like to do, where I map out the crease with the darkest shade. Now I'm going to pick up the shade called Fate, and I'm just going to tightly blend above the first shade. As I've said in previous videos, I get a lot of comments saying like that I didn't blend or I didn't show the blending. If I showed you guys how long I sat here blending for, my videos would be so long. That's why I like to kind of like quickly go through them, because as somebody who also watches tutorials, I don't like to sit there and watch the blending for a super long time, so I hope you guys are okay with that. Now I'm going to pick up the shade called Epic, and I'm just going to blend right above the lash shade once again. I'm also going to kind of do the same thing on the lower lash line that I did in my crease. First, starting out with the really dark shade, I'm going to kind of connect it to my outer corner over here and slightly blend this out. I'm not going to go all the way in. Then I'm going to pick up the second darkest shade, and I'm going to start this over here and kind of blend backwards. And then I'm going to take the lightest shade and blend right under these two shades to kind of blend them out. So I went ahead and added a little bit of concealer to the lid. Now I'm going to pick up the shade called Novel, and I'm just going to start putting this on the inner part of my lid. This is such a pretty shade. Now I'm going to take the shade called Drama, and I'm just going to apply this to the rest of my lid and kind of blend it to my outer corner. And then of course I need to blend these two shades together, kind of in the middle of the lid. Now I'm going to go back in with that first kind of like dark gray black shade. I can't really tell if it's a black or a gray, but I'm just going to blend this back onto the lid to deepen it back up. All right, so here is this eye complete. It reminds me a lot of the Colourpop Smoke Show palette. I believe that's what it's called. I think they like changed the name, but that's like their gray smoky eye palette. So I did kind of a similar look that I would do with like that palette, and I really like the way that it turned out. Now for the last look, I'm going to be combining shades from all of the palettes. So I'm first going to be picking up this dark brown right here from the Lyric palette, and once again mapping out the shape of my crease. Now I'm going to take the shade called Darling from the Amor palette, and again I'm just going to tightly blend this above the first shade. I really love this deep berry shade. It's seriously such a good shade. Now I'm going to take this orange from the Crush palette, and I'm just going to lightly blend this right above the lash shade. So I went ahead and cut my crease off camera. Obviously, cut creases are like my favorite kind of looks, if you guys couldn't tell. So now I'm going to take the shade Destiny from the Cherish palette, and I'm going to apply this to the inner part of my lid. Now I'm going to take the shade Arrow from the Crush palette, and I'm going to apply this one to the rest of the lid. I'm going to blend the dark brown back onto the outer corner. Now I'm going to highlight my inner corner with the shade called Novel from the Ballad palette. And for the lower lash line, I'm going to pretty much just do the same thing that I did in my crease, starting out with this dark brown and kind of connecting it over here. Then I'm going to blend the berry shade along the lower lash line. And then lastly, I'm going to blend those out with the orange shade. So here are the final two looks. I really like how these turned out. I really like the way that all of the looks turned out. I think that this one is probably one of my favorites just because I like the way that all of the shades from each of the palettes like work together. I feel like you can create a really nice eye look if you mix and match the palettes. So yeah, I'm really impressed with all of these palettes. I was so excited whenever I saw these. I feel like they're definitely a new like kind of like style for Colourpop. They're different and I like that. Not everybody needs like a big eyeshadow palette, so having a 5-pan palette like this is really nice. It's easy to travel with, easy to throw in your purse. The packaging of these is actually really nice. Like they feel very heavy. They remind me a lot of the Natasha Denona 5-pan palettes, but obviously these are a little bit smaller. But the packaging feels just as nice as this palette right here. So I'm gonna go ahead and do like kind of like a ranking and show you guys my favorite in order. So we're gonna start out with probably my favorite palette out of all of these. And I think the Crush palette would have to be my favorite because it has 3 like actual mattes in it. It has 3 true mattes and then 1 kind of matte with glitter in it and then 1 shimmer shade. So this is probably my favorite, followed by the Cherish palette. I also really like this one a lot. This is more of your like berry and red palette. This one has 2 true mattes, then 1 matte with shimmer in it, and then 2 shimmer shades. These are like metallic shades, and I love this champagne shade right here. So this one probably comes in second place for me. And then next we have the Amor palette, which is probably not a surprise to you guys because you know I love pink palettes. But this one only has 2 true mattes in it. That's why it is a little bit lower on my list, but it is a gorgeous palette. I love this berry shade right here. And then the glitter is stunning. I love the glitter shade in here. The dark kind of metallic shimmery shade is not my favorite, but the shade Romeo is actually a really good kind of like matte with glitter in it to blend into the crease. I really like that mauve-y pink shade. And then the next palette on my list I'm going to say is the Lyric palette. I actually love this palette. I think it's a really pretty palette. This one also has 2 like true mattes in it and then 2 metallics and a glitter. This one is a stunning palette. I really like it a lot. And then the palette that I would probably put in last, not that I don't like it, the only reason it's last on my list is because it doesn't have that many mattes. It has 1 matte in it, and it's the Ballad palette, which is the smoky and gray palette. I actually really love a smoky eye, and I think that these shades are gorgeous, but having only 1 true matte is kind of a negative in my opinion because I use mattes so much. But you can use these in the crease, but they do create more of like a shimmery kind of satin eye look, which is not my favorite, but they are really pretty shades. So yeah, I really enjoyed these palettes. I'm glad that I kind of tried them out before I did this video for you guys, so it wasn't just like a straight up first impression. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Are you going to be picking up any of these palettes, or did you already buy some of them, and which one is your favorite? So yeah, that is it for today's video. I hope you guys all enjoyed it. If you did, please make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you're not already. Also make sure you guys have your notifications turned on, that way you don't miss out on any of my future videos. All you have to do is click the bell next to the subscribe button, and then you'll receive a notification every time I upload a new video. And I will see you guys in my next video. Thank you so much for watching.